Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Michelle Taylor, and I am based in Orlando, Florida, in the United States. I am the founder of an initiative that is near and dear to my heart called Women in Wealth. And the purpose of this is to really change the way women think and feel about money. It's really important to me to make sure that everybody out there has access and a community to build their version of success, whatever that means. I am really excited to chat with all of you today and hopefully leave you with some inspiring things to think through as you determine what that definition of success is for you. So why this is important to me is a bit of an interesting story, and I'm going to give you all of the details. So I am a product of a divorced home where my parents both viewed money very differently, and unfortunately, neither of them gave me access to the real tools that it would take to build wealth or understand how money works. So I'm here to change that narrative. My mom was a very hard worker, but didn't have a lot of income to play with. So I grew up watching her manage our family's finances and budget every penny. And by seeing that, it really allowed me a peek into what it took to understand how to make a dollar work for you. But it also made me realize how important it was to understand the big picture of your financials and to prioritize your goals. And that was all lovely. But what was lacking there was obviously she wasn't talking to me about really growing wealth. It was more about just making sure that the ends were met. And then my dad was an entrepreneur who didn't start off with a lot of success. But as his business grew, I got to really see what autonomy looked like and what it felt like to really have the power and the control to build the future that you wanted to have. And he showed me that with enough grit and determination, I could write my own path and my own story. So those two dynamic pieces coming together were really helpful, but still left me with a lot of questions on how the basics worked and how to make sure that I was being responsible and living in an and environment instead of an or environment. And what does that mean? It means budgeting and paying attention to saving, paying down debt, and investing in my future. And I think that that's where I'm hoping to make a big impact for others. So I went to school, went to university for something entirely different than I ended up doing, still with those entrepreneurial vision and pull that I was getting from my dad, but not really understanding what I wanted to do. So my best friend and I moved to Italy right after college. And the plan was to open a boutique here in the States and import goods from Europe and give people an exclusive shopping experience. It went really well, except for one big issue. And that, of course, was the timing. Timing is everything. And this was a good lesson. It was in the middle of the big recession here in the United States. So the dollar wasn't very strong. It wasn't the time to be importing European goods. So I had to pivot. And I know a lot of business owners and women, I think are really good at thinking on our feet. You know, diamonds are best built under pressure. So coming home, I realized I quickly needed to pivot. And leaning back into that entrepreneurial start that I had with my father, I had developed a product as a project in my final year of university. And it was to develop a polycarbonate film that would protect the bottom of Christian Louboutins. And I was very excited about this, but I had no idea where to start. So again, pulling back on those small details that I had learned as a child watching my parents, I did everything on my own. Google was my office space, and I learned quickly what it would take and also how it felt to be a young woman navigating the birth of a business in what is typically a very male-dominated industry. So I sourced all of the professionals that I needed, and I stayed true to the things that were really important to me. And we almost had a really big picture, a really big goal, I should say. Product was ready to launch, and then I was dealt the news that I had to go through in vitro to have my family, and that was a big block in the story. So I, again, thought about how do I pivot? And I took that dream that was, you know, standing on the precipice of the cliff looking over, it becoming everything I had wanted it to be. And I had to divert my attention to having real babies instead of a business that was my baby for so many years. In that, I was feeling a little bit lost, and again, had this pull to entrepreneurship, but didn't know where it would lead me. In this journey, I found that I made a lot of financial mistakes. And again, just still felt so called to understanding where that disconnect was. I ended up following in a friend's footsteps and going into the financial services industry. Again, heavily male dominated, and things have changed so much, and feeling a little bit like I was paving my own way as a woman, trying to make sense of it all and help the people that were most important to me, which were women, specifically women business owners. In my work in this field over the next several years, I found my true love and calling for what I think is what I meant to do. And that was servicing clients, but also really thinking through an initiative that would make women feel comfortable to grow and expand their education, and allowing them access to all of the tools, resources, and most importantly, the community to define their level of success and empower them to go out and make those big decisions and hard choices that often we face. So we're here today. I officially will launch the Women in Wealth community in January of this year. Lots of passion has gone into this project, and I'm so excited to say that we are finally ready. Not only is this going to be a community where women can gather and be around other like-minded women, but again, having a safe space to raise their hand, and also not feeling like information and access to wealth is something that's only being discussed on the golf course, which I feel like a lot of us have felt. I also just launched my podcast, Talk Wealthy to Me, and I'm so excited to continue to bring women into the conversation and make sure that I am being true to the young girl that I once was, where I didn't have access to any of this or know even where to start. So that's really my story. I'm so excited to share more and get to learn a little bit about what else is out there that women may be looking for and raise all of us together.
What a fantastic story, Michelle, and an incredible journey you've been on. It really
Thank you.
fascinates me when women take their personal experiences and transmute what was something painful into something really positive. And you're right, diamonds are made under pressure, and you seem to have come out of it in a very incredible way. So let's
Thank
backtrack a little
you.
bit on your personal journey. Can you share your journey of overcoming leukemia at 17 and how that shaped your life and your career and your perspective on life?
I will, yes. And I think that that is truly the most pivotal moment of my story. It's not necessarily tied to where I ended up today, but I most certainly wouldn't have ended up where I am without it. So I was a teenager, never had had a cavity, I always like to say, and came home one day feeling a little bit tired from a cheerleading camp. And thankfully, my mother's intuition, she knew something was not right. And I had what I thought was the blueprint to my future and was well on my way to going to college and building this big journey, this big venture that this was not part of the plan. So I think that this was really the first time that I had to learn how to pivot and understand that your mental toughness and working through adversity is the secret sauce. You know, we all want to know what the secret sauce is. And I'm thankful that I got that lesson at that young age. I was faced with a diagnosis that if it wasn't treated quickly, my parents were told that I would have passed away within 3 weeks, if you can believe it. But with a regimen in place to, you know, really aggressively go after the disease, there's a very high cure rate. So I immediately just decided that this was not going to be bigger than me. I was going to put all of my energy into focusing on the big goal, and probably a little bit of naivety mixed in with that, of just believing I could control the outcome. And thank God we're here today.
Yeah, and sometimes that naivety that you speak of, that innocence, probably saved your life because of the positivity and the determination to overcome something that was in front of you. Even though you didn't know how you're going to do it, you were determined you were going to do it. And that's why you're talking to us today. So very, very fascinating to hear you share how you overcame that. You then went on and created your business initiative, which is
Yes.
just absolutely intriguing.
Thank you.
How did your personal experiences influence your mission to empower women financially?
Well, so within my community, one of the things that's really important to me is there is a space that's called I've Got a Girl. And I'm sure that you've heard the terminology when somebody says, oh, if you need something, I've got a guy. And going back to that story of when I was sick, that's really where this comes from. So I was faced with this very scary diagnosis, and I had an uncle that was an entrepreneur, and I'd always looked up to him. He was very successful. And one of the things, it wasn't necessarily the money that had come with his success, but more of his relationships. And so when I was sick and I was told to get a second opinion, the first place that we wanted to go was Mayo Clinic, which is the best of the best here in the States. And we couldn't get in. And we reached out to my uncle, and he made a phone call. And within 24 hours, I had an appointment. And in that moment, I recognized that it is so important to give women the power to build that community and empower them so that there's never a resource that they're lacking to get the answer or to the end result that they're looking for. That was something that has stayed with me from, for 20 plus years without showing my age, but I've got a girl it's something I'm really passionate about.
Now, how do you define financial empowerment for women, and why is it important?
Well, I think that so often women, it's funny. I was just with a group of ladies a couple of days ago, and one of them was saying that her daughter, she's just told her that she better marry well. And she said that in the wrong company, because I quickly challenged her and said, I have unfortunately seen so many situations where, because of the norm of our society, where women are groomed to go out and find their passion, but also it's always in the back of their minds, or as a parent, your mind a lot of times, that you just want your daughter to marry well. And oftentimes that means financially. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but where I've seen so many people get into trouble, you don't have to be the one that is rowing the canoe, as I like to say. But if you're in a partnership or a marriage and you have a spouse that's taking control of the financials, it's critical that you understand what's happening. Women, we outlive our spouses 87% of the time. And most of the time we die as single women. And that's because when a spouse dies, we're less likely to get remarried, and we outlive our spouses. So not only that, but imagine a time, if you can, where a spouse, there's a divorce and it's unexpected. I once had a client that had her lights turned off, not because she didn't have the money to pay, but that she didn't know where to pay them. And so I really think it's important to empower women to understand your financials. It doesn't mean that you've got to be the one that's in charge, but what it does mean is that on an annual or quarterly basis, you're sitting down to understand the big picture for what it looks like for you as a single woman, or as a mother, or as a spouse, so that you understand the importance of the journey, but also that you're never caught unexpectedly without knowing where to go next or how to keep your lights on.
Yes, all these things are very basic, and we take them for granted if you know how to do it. But that empowerment piece is absolutely crucial for any woman's survival, to be honest. What are the most common financial hurdles that women face, and how does your initiative address them?
So oftentimes women just don't know what they don't know. And that really goes for men as well. But the reality is, if you haven't had the education to understand how to invest your money, where do you start? Where do you ask? It goes back again, as women, we are less likely to raise our hand. There's a confidence gap. So how do we ensure that women are within a community where there's mentorship, where there's peers that have been through something similar? So what I've tried to build with this is, let's focus on coming together regardless of age, stage of life, or the type of work that you're doing, and create a place where we can all share together and look out for the sisterhood. It's really important to understand the power of just getting started. A lot of times women, we are a lot more conservative when it comes to our investment strategies. We tend to have a lot more capital or cash that we feel we need to have set aside. And there is a big loss there, because unfortunately, if you're focused on paying down a debt that you may not need to pay down, such as your home, and you're doing that at the expense of investing in your future, it may feel good, but unless you have somebody telling you there's a way to do everything, and again, it's going back to living in the and not in the or, I think that we're missing out. So the basics, really, and having a place to ask those basic questions, and arriving in a place, I always use the analogy of like an elevator. If you've come to the top floor and you feel like you have had a lot of success within your career, you're doing all of the right things, but then it's kind of like, what's next? Well, those are kind of conversations that tend to be happening in rooms over bourbons with cigars that, it doesn't mean that we don't have access, but unless somebody tells you about a real estate syndication or venture capital or private credit, you don't even know to ask the right questions, right? So it's really giving people a place where they almost have too much information with the
Yes.
hope and anticipation that they will grow into it, and we can change generational wealth and what that looks like for the members.
So, what strategies do you recommend for women wanting to close the wealth gap?
I think the first and the easiest one is really just to start talking about money. And let me use a very easy example, but let's just say that we're having a happy hour with our girlfriends or we're all at brunch. How often are we having a conversation about what we're doing with our money? Or better yet, just how much we all make. And that we're all taught that we don't talk about money or religion or politics. I like
Mm,
to think that when you're in the confines of a good group of girlfriends, that those should be safe topics to disagree on, but also to have collaborative conversation. Think of the disservice we're doing to each other if we have a girlfriend that's going into a job interview and doesn't understand what is fair in the market because we don't want to share how much we make to
mm,
encourage her to ask for more. I
yeah.
would say that's the biggest thing. First and foremost is to talk about money, to understand the professionals that you need to have at your table. So going back to the I've Got a Girl initiative, really it's just about understanding who the people are that you need to be turning to ask for financial advice. And then once you identify who that person is, making sure that you're working with them in the right capacity, knowing
Mhm.
what questions to ask them so that you feel like you're building out your own personal board of directors to help guide you along the way of creating the ultimate vision of your success.
That is so true. How do you help women to overcome the limiting money beliefs?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's our minds that really hold us back, right?
It is. And I think it ultimately comes back down to understanding where the limitations come from and realizing if they are self-inflicted or not. And
Mhm.
then finding that mentorship, I think is so important to understand it. Flying private or buying an expensive handbag, that may not be what your definition of success is. And in reality, so few women are shooting towards those type of goals. What it comes down to is how do I spend more time intentionally with my family and friends? And how do I make sure that I never outlive my money? I think that as women, finding people to ask the right questions to is going
Mhm.
to be critical. When it comes to limiting mindsets, oftentimes we're a product of our environment and we can't control how we were raised. So it's
Yes.
really about, we're in a day and age where there's so much access to information. And I think doing some research and understanding what truly is necessary to keep as an emergency account or
Mm.
where do you start with investing? And the information is there. The secret though is once you find the information, you need to make sure that the information is a right fit and appropriate for you. And how do you tweak it to make sure that that's the case?
So, can you describe your vision for Women and Wealth Initiative over the next 5 years? Where are you taking this? Where do you want to go?
My goal is that nationwide we have a movement. I would like to see a collective of women who are changing the narrative on who's at the table, who's writing the future of financial planning and understanding that we all have the power to do so. I want this to be a community where if you have a financial question or need a place to find mentorship or ask for advice, that this is the go-to place. So I envision Women in Wealth as being home, the financial home, at least for women, hopefully worldwide.
That's an exciting vision and very big. I love women who think big. Awesome.
Fingers crossed.
So what advice would you give to women entrepreneurs who are just starting out?
I would say for any of you that are just starting out, it's really important to do the work in the front end to make sure that you're not having to go and correct work that is done incorrectly down the road. You know, it's hard to invest in your business when you don't feel like you have much to invest before there's money coming in. But I think that doing it in the beginning saves you a lot of time and money waiting for a more ideal time once you've got revenue coming in. So I would say if you're starting out, build out that board of your personal advisors. Understand what the big vision is. Be crystal clear on what you want your business to look like. And then finding the team that's going to help you get there. I also think it's really important to preserve capital. And that might not sound fun and exciting in the beginning, but I think that in this day and age, it's really important that we are prepared for anything as business owners. We're prepared to hire and hire quickly, but also fire and fire quickly. So you've got to be able to make decisions within your business on the, turn of a dime. And if you don't have the capital to do so, it could make you hesitate and or take too long to make a decision that can cost you money. So I would say build capital, keep capital there in the beginning months and year, and then understand the professionals you need at your table and have a big plan. Don't sell yourself short. The bigger, the better, because you're more likely to end up in a place that you'd never imagine, even if it's not the big vision you start out with.
Yeah, they say aim for the stars. You might fall somewhere in the middle, right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
I love it. So what role do you think financial literacy plays in closing the gender gap, the gender pay gap?
That's such an important question because as women, I think that the pay gap comes because of two reasons. One, we are typically the ones that will step out of working outside of the home to raise families or to take care of sick or elderly family members. And then we lose a lot of valuable time. And that goes back to, they always say the best time to start investing was yesterday. The second best day is today. If we're losing years of investments because we're taking care of children or working inside the home instead of outside of the home, that's a big issue. The other one is truly, I believe, just not having the conversations, not having the confidence, not throwing our name in the ring if we want a promotion. And it all comes down to, again, building the level of comfort and community that women are willing to take those risks and ask for more, strive for more, and have the confidence to know what they deserve. So I would say take advantage of the opportunities that you have within your workplace, and then try to find the right people at your table to help you understand what you truly need to set aside and what you truly should be putting towards future dollars. I think that that's honestly the biggest way and the quickest way that we can close the gender gap.
Okay, my next question is to do with going back into the past. If I could teleport you into the past to go and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom, based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
I would say shopping won't make you happy. When I was young and going through some of those troubling times that we talked about earlier, I looked for outside fulfillment and trying to understand how to make myself feel good. And I think that as women, we tend to fall into that, unfortunately. I would also say that I myself have fallen victim of not raising my hand and asking the question. So I would say ask for advice. Don't be scared to raise your hand. And then I would say the last piece is really just invest in yourself. Even if it's spending an hour reading a book, as much as you can, or doing some research online, invest in your financial knowledge. There's so much out there, and I waited longer than I should have to start that journey. And that 24-year-old girl coming home from living abroad that couldn't even buy a bottle of water in the airport because of overspending and not understanding what I was doing, I think that she would have benefited from those 3 things greatly.
Okay, so the last question is going to take you into the future. If I could teleport you into the future to meet the 90-year-old you.
Oh my goodness.
Based on what life has taught you and how this amazing woman has led you to that point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
Oh my gosh. I would say don't blink. Every stage is glorious, but goes so fast. And I would also say take the time to be where your feet are. I have found that in this world's fast moving society, sometimes celebrating the little wins and just taking a breath is a hard ask. I think I would also tell her, well done. There was a time when I was scared of never having children, never having grandchildren. So I hope that the 90-year-old version of myself is well-traveled and well-loved and continues to not sweat the small stuff and enjoy every minute.
Michelle, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you. Thank you.
The pleasure's been mine. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement that brings you the voices and stories of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, inspire you, energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And thanks again, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making